Hey guys, it's Noel and this is Wheezy Reviews, and this is the Philips Fidelio X2HR. Now this is a headphone that's seen quite the hype train of late, and what with them being in the Black Friday sales, I decided to pick up a pair to see if they were any good or not. So these are a high-res audio certified open back headphone with a 50mm, 32 ohm and 100 dB sensitivity dynamic driver, which I paid about £100 for in the Black Friday sales, and I believe they were about $100 in the US as well, although actual retail prices for these outside of the sale can vary quite wildly. I think when they came out they were around, $300? But I think they usually go for around $150. However, whatever you pay for this headphone probably determines whether they're worth it or not. So are they worth it for the Black Friday sale price? Well, let's get into it. Now, before I get too deep into this, I just want to say that this is just my opinion. I'm probably going to get quite critical on these headphones during this review, and part of the reason for that is because their usual retail price is quite high, but also because these headphones have been really quite hyped, so I do think that they do require a good critical look. Now also, I should say that whilst I do have some serious reservations about these headphones, and we will go into that, there have been quite a few grumblings online about quality control with these headphones, and a certain amount of inconsistency with the build and with the sound quality from these headphones. However, I can only report my experience. Now, no matter how harsh I get on these headphones during this review, I do have some very mixed feelings about these headphones, and I will try and be as balanced as I can. If you like or hate these headphones, that's fine. However, this is just how I feel. So straight off the bat, it's fair to say that the Philips X2HR is a very large headphone. Its weight is a chunky 380 grams, however it is reasonably comfortable despite this. The suspension headband is very soft and comfortable, however they certainly do feel heavy on the head, and I think part of that is to do with this spring tension. When you're wearing them you do feel a certain amount of pressure on your head that perhaps might be more than you'd expect for the weight of this headphone. However, having said that, I didn't find them to be particularly uncomfortable. Now the main part of the headband is this pleather or leather coated rail system around the outside. This is stamped with the Philips Fidelio logo in the middle. Now this gap between the suspended headband and the outer headband certainly makes these headphones look really quite large on the head. And this could be quite polarizing for a lot of people, however I suppose that's a moot point because how they perform is more important than how they look. Now the ear cups are quite large, they're made of plastic except for this metal grille on the back, which actually is nice and stiff so it shouldn't dent particularly easy. This is surrounded by this metal ring here which forms the ear cup yoke, and the ear cups are hinged in the middle like this for extra comfort. There isn't actually any lateral rotation from this yoke, however because the headband is so flexible they do have plenty of movement. And because we have these rather large ear cups, that does also mean we have these large ear pads, and they're nice and big and deep, and they have this plush foam which seems like a memory foam. They're coated in a velour material, which is the type of velour unfortunately that picks up a lot of hair and dust and other stuff. Now the ear pads themselves are actually removable, they just pull off with a little bit of force like so, and they are held in with these 4 holes on the back of the pads and these 4 retaining pins here. And actually with the pads off you can see that the drivers are angled. Now at this point I should probably note that there have been some reports online about quality control issues with these headphones. Some people have reported that their ear pads have been glued on when they should have been removable, which is concerning. There was also a picture doing the rounds a few days ago on Reddit where someone's pair of X2HRs had had the driver installed wrong, so on the one side the driver was facing in the other direction, which meant that they were facing opposite directions on either side. And obviously that's quite concerning, and if you do pick up a pair of these it would be worth checking if your drivers are pointing in the right direction and that your ear pads are actually removable. Now back to the ear pads, they just pop back on like so. You just align the pins with the holes on the pads and then just push, and they do stay on really quite tightly. In fact, they can be quite difficult to remove. But one complaint I do have about this pin retention method with these pads means that you are going to find it quite difficult to obtain aftermarket replacements for these ear pads. Now that's probably a moot point considering aftermarket replacements tend to colour the sound of a headphone for the negative. However, if Philips don't actually provide any replacement earpads themselves, then what's the point in making them removable in the first place? Especially if you can't find aftermarket replacements. Now, I have read online a few people have complained that they found it extremely difficult or next to impossible to find genuine replacement earpads for these headphones. Now, your mileage may vary on that, but I just thought it was worth noting. Now, the headband is supplied with just one cable. It's this 3-meter long braided affair, which I really don't like. Now, while it seems that Philips have gone for this rather premium looking and feeling braided cable, they've opted for this rather stiff braid, which really holds the kinks. And overall, I think that this cable is really form over function. The saving grace of this cable is it does end in two 3.5mm TRSs either end, and that connects up to the left-hand cup on single side of the headphones, and it does stay in nice and tight. At the other end, we do have a push-on 1/4-inch adapter supplied with this. Philips have also included this cable management clip. This is clipped onto the cable at the end, and you have enough room to maybe clip 2 sections of cable into this, like so. But then what? I really can't work out how you're meant to use this in such a manner that the cable doesn't just uncoil anyway. So enough of my rant about the cable, let's talk about the sound. And this is where I'm either going to get negative comments for being quite critical on these headphones, or positive comments for at least being honest about how I feel about these headphones. So let's start out with the good stuff. Soundstage isn't bad. One of the first things I noticed when I put these headphones on was how open they sounded, which is really good. However, they're not super wide, but they're certainly not as intimate as the HD650. However, when it comes to imaging, they're not so good. Now, I've read some people online saying the imaging is pretty good on these, and some have said it's pretty poor. For me, I just thought they were, meh. And that's kind of disappointing because I know a lot of people buy these headphones expecting them to be good gaming headphones because they have a 3.5mm connector. You could connect something like a V-Moda Boom Pro to these and use these as a gaming headset. However, because the imaging is so, well, meh, I don't think they make particularly good gaming headphones. Now, onto bass, they do have a really good bass performance for an open back headphone. In fact, in many ways, bass is the party piece of this headphone. It's big, it's full, it has plenty of authority. However, it's not especially articulate, and it may be a bit muddy in the mid bass. Mids are kind of interesting. They're a little bit recessed, particularly in the low mids. However, where it gets really interesting is this rather large shouty bump at around 1.6 kHz. And whilst the vocals are quite forwards on this headphone, they can also be really quite shouty. In fact, this headphone has a very bright tilt to it. And I'm not just talking bright, I'm talking harsh and sibilant. I think that really lets it down. So let's talk about some of my test tracks. Fragments of Time by Daft Punk. I actually found this to be really, really enjoyable. The vocals were good, the bass was excellent, really full, reasonably articulate. I found that these headphones did a fairly good job for this track, and the same goes for Polaris by Deadmau5. Mostly pretty good. There's a decent fullness and warmth and a good punchy kick and bass that wasn't too flabby. The synth lead, however, was a bit on the bright side. Then I listened to Black Flame by Buried Tomorrow. In fact, I listened to the entire album. Buried Tomorrow are a metalcore outfit. Found that whole album particularly enjoyable. But Salt Salt by A Perfect Circle, while it did have a nice deep full and reasonably articulate bass, it was a bit muddy in the mid bass to upper bass sort of region. The snares were really snappy, vocals were really quite forwards. In fact, I thought Maynard sounded pretty good with these headphones. The organs were a little bit subdued. However, when we get to the screaming guitar section, about 3 minutes and 10 seconds, it's this screaming, distorted, delayed guitar. It was really harsh, piercing, unresolving, just unenjoyable. Then Automaton by Jamiroquai. The synth arpeggio was really stabby. JK's vocals were quite harsh. And actually, I think this is a very bright track anyway, but these headphones really didn't do it any favours. Broken by Sleater Kinney. This is a piano ballad with female vocals. Actually, the piano sounded pretty good, nice and full and warm as you'd expect a piano to sound. Very similar to how it sounds on the HD650, for example. However, the vocals were really harsh, really sharp, really forwards, really sibilant. The guitar part was alright though. And then on to my last example, Deep Jungle Walk by Asterix, which is kind of like your side techno trance kind of thing. It has this big, full, deep bass line, which was really quite excellent on these headphones. Later on in the track, there's these staccato, echoey voices. I expected to hear them be really sharp and piercing, but they were actually not too bad. They were nicely forwards without being harsh. So the overall picture that I'm painting here is that the bass on these headphones is really good, but the treble and the upper mids, they really let down the overall sound signature of these headphones. I was finding that I had to turn the volume down in order to protect my ears from the really bright, piercing and stabbing treble sound, when of course I'd be turning the bass down at the same time, so I wasn't getting the benefit of the bass. And this is the problem with this headphone as far as I'm concerned. It's just two-faced. On the one hand, everything below 1K isn't bad. Everything above 1K is awful. It's just so inconsistent. And this juxtaposition of a fairly decent performance below 1 kHz and a fairly terrible performance above 1 kHz is really quite frustrating, and it really kills this headphone for me. You know, 1 minute you could be listening to a track that sounds absolutely fantastic on these headphones, and then as soon as some bright element gets introduced to the track, or you listen to a brighter track, these sound terrible. There's no middle ground with this headphone. It's either really good in the bass area, or it's really bad in the treble area, or the upper mids. And it's for that reason that I really cannot understand why these headphones have been so hyped. Now you might be thinking, oh, why am I being so harsh on a headphone that cost you £100? Surely there's not much better out there for £100, and that's wrong. Because these exist. Now, the HD 599 was also in the Black Friday sale, and they were £10 cheaper than the X2HR. And the HD 599 is a really comfortable, really well-rounded and balanced headphone that was cheaper than this. I really don't understand why there was so much hype about the X2HR over Black Friday when the 599 was also on sale and was cheaper. And this, frankly, is a much more refined headphone. And it's for that reason that I can't recommend these for anything close to their normal retail price. And even at their Black Friday sale price of £99 or $100, they're still really difficult for me to recommend. Not when the HD 599 was also on sale at the same time. To say that I'm really disappointed with this headphone is an understatement. So just before I wrap up then, I just want to say once again, this is just my opinion and my experience with the X2HR. If you enjoy this headphone, then that's good. But for me, these get a big old thumbs down. And if you're interested at all, I will have a review of the HD 599 coming up in a few weeks' time. But that's going to be it for now. If you like this, give me the thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button down there and maybe the bell right next to it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.